Well, good morning. We are today back to the book Liberation, the last chapter. We started last month. It's a long chapter. So what we saw last month was they were still at Madalena's house. She was in a sleep state, recovering. Gubbio prepared them for the battle that was to come with Gregorio and his team that was going to face them. Matilda, the mentor and Gregorio's mother, was preparing herself to materialize again in a intermediary place, as Andre Luiz describes here. And Saldanha asked if they shouldn't prepare a defense, and Gubbio says that with the master we cannot fight blow with another blow. We cannot heal wound causing another one. Healing only occurs as the result of care, medicine, and rehabilitation. And any defense depends on the Lord. So that's where we stopped last month. Now we start here a few minutes later, the last paragraph of this page. Okay, Zoraida, so you start reading there.
Okay. A few minutes later, somewhat subdued, we left the home where we had learned so many valuable lessons. With the stronger ones helping the weaker, we cautiously set out on the road to the pre-established rendezvous site. After 2 hours under the guidance of Gubbio, who was fully trained for experiences of such nature, we finally arrived. The area around us was strikingly beautiful. A green plain crowned with moonlight invited us to meditation and prayer, and as if inciting our minds, the light, fresh breezes of dawn invited us to think comforting thoughts. Our instructor had us sit in a semicircle and recall various scenes from the Gospels. With visible emotion, he told us that, according to a private message he had received, Gregorio and his cohorts were already headed our way, and that if any of us wanted to avoid him, trying to flee would be futile because most of the pilgrims gathered there were incapable of volitating to a higher plane due to the density of their mental pattern. Thus, what we needed right now was the attitude of prayer and loving expectation of someone that was able to understand, help, and forgive. Precious stimuli fell upon us from the starry expanse. Constellations shone in the distance, while the moon, silent and beautiful, seemed ready to witness our Christian effort. I noticed that, seated on the grass, our instructor had assumed the position of a mediumistic instrument, as had happened during the meeting, because he trustingly put me in charge of the group. I accepted without hesitation, although I was extremely concerned. With such a measure in place, Gubbio went into a heightened mental state through prayer. We respectfully accompanied him. There was no place for conversations apart from the delicate issue of that hour. We were waiting in expectant observation when a far-off noise announced that things were about to change. The instructor, despite being pale himself, seemed like he was already in communication with high-order spirits imperceptible to us. But after exhorting us to silence, patience, serenity, and prayer, he asked up to watch everything that was about to happen without revulsion, anguish, or discouragement.
Thanks, Zoraida.
Okay.
So as I said before, they were at Margarita's home. So, and there is a group of spirits there. Who is this? We left the home. That's Gubbio, Eloy, and Andre Luiz, the team that we have been following since the beginning of the book. Plus, all the spirits that were there and decided that it was time to change and allow themselves to be part of a Gubbio rescue effort. So there is a large number of former Gregorio's workers, Saldanha being the lead of them, Gaspar being another one, and other spirits that are not mentioned by name in the book. So it's a large group of spirits that are leaving the house and going to the direction of the place where they are going to meet Gregorio. So Andre Luiz describes that it takes 2 hours for them to arrive to the place that they were supposed to go, and then we may think, well, isn't the spirit world, we find ourselves traveling at the speed of thought? Yes and no. More evolved spirits that understand the process, that are in a more elevated state, they travel when they think, where they think they are.
Yeah.
Or spirits still living in inferior tendencies, or still too much connected to the physical world, they move at the speed that we move here. If you remember the book, The Messengers, which is the second book of the Andre Luiz collection, the first time Andre Luiz comes to Earth on a mission to help and assist, it takes 2/3 of the book for them to arrive on Earth, going through the lower zones, walking, darkening themselves. And after that, Andre Luiz doesn't describe any long journey. You know, he describes that they go to Earth and they're already there.
Mm.
So it takes some time for a spirit to be able to learn how to move with the thought process. And this group of spirits, a large part of them is recovering spirits that just left the lower zones, that were working directly with Gregorio for God knows how many years. So they can only move at the speed of that we move here on Earth in a way. So that's why it took them 2 hours to leave the house to arrive to the place where they were going to meet Gregorio. And then Andre Luiz describes the green plain. It was an open field, let's say. Gubbio tells them that Gregorio and his group is already on their way, and that they shouldn't try to even if they get scared, they shouldn't try to escape, because they were not capable of volitating, meaning volitating,
Moving,
flying, yes, above the ground level. Spirits like Andre Luiz and Gubbio are capable of volitating, but most of the spirits there, due to their density of their mental pattern, that's important. Why they can't? Because their mental pattern is too close to the physical world, very dense. The same way we cannot fly by ourselves here, we go back to the spiritual world, we cannot volitate there until we reach a higher level of vibration. Okay. Gubbio is preparing himself to be a medium, because Matilda is going to communicate through him. Again, we mentioned many times mediumship in the spiritual world, for high order spirits to connect with low order spirits. Sometimes the materialization or the mediumship is the best way. Can't they change their perispirit to be more, to be present at the lower zones? Yes, they can, but it will take a longer time. If they need immediate presence there, it's easier for them to communicate through mediumship. If they don't need to spend time, because the process of transforming the perispirit is a lengthy process according to what we understand. It is said that Jesus took 1,000 years to be able to assume the perispirit needed for him to incarnate on earth. So we can imagine by that the easiest way for high order spirits to communicate is to use lower order spirits through mediumship process, both, and we'll see here a materialization, or also in order to communicate. We'll see both of them here in this chapter, and you'll see the beautiful process that the high order spirits use. So Gubbio entered into a heightened mental state. Of course, being a more evolved spirit, he has the ability to enter into this high level of concentration much better than we do. And one thing that is interesting here is the instructor becoming pale himself in a trance state in the spiritual world. Okay, we see mediums here in a trance state, and they change somehow their appearances, right? And in the spiritual world, we see that it's the same. Gubbio becomes pale, so he changes also his appearance as he enters in the trance state. And the last thing I want to mention here is that Andre Luiz says he was already in communication with high order spirits, imperceptible to us. Again, vibrational levels. We communicate with spirits that vibrate at the same level that we are or below our level. We cannot communicate or connect with spirits at a higher level unless they allow us to see or hear them. Okay, this is also very important to remember how communication is done in the spiritual world, and even perception, right? We talk about spirits in the spiritual world that cannot see or hear any spirits. So, and Andre Luiz mentions in some of the books that the spirits can see some of them, cannot see all of them. In the book Missionaries of the Light, when you have Segismundo's parents sleeping, and when they wake up in the spiritual world, the mother, Segismundo's future mother, can only see her grandmother, cannot see the others. Segismundo's father only sees Segismundo and get scared. So, you see according to our mental vibrations, unless the spirits make themselves, more evolved spirits make themselves visible or heard to us. Okay? Questions, comments here?
Yeah, João, the issue of volitation is a very interesting one. It shows that it's silly to say, but the absolute perfection of this evolutionary path that we go through. Volitation is a merit. It's not a gift that God gives to us. Something that you conquer through one effort in evolve. And does not come before you're absolutely ready for it, because you'd misuse it. And you waste opportunities to go through necessary experiences in order to progress. If those spirits to whom Gubbio addressed had the ability of volitate, none of them would stay behind. They would run away when they see what was about to come. And they would wait to that precious opportunity to go through this very important experience for their own progress. So it shows the perfection of the system, that you will not be granted a faculty that does not help you, because you would delay your own progress. And you only have that ability when you are able to use it at the right time precisely.
Yes, perfect. Just to add here, the the leaders of the lower zones, low order spirits, they can, in a sense, volitate at a very low level, meaning they cannot really go to wherever they want, but they can rise a little bit above the ground and move themselves in a different way because they have the intellectual abilities and understanding, but they cannot volitate in the sense that we understand volitation of high order spirit.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I'll continue. We did not have long to wait. A few minutes later, Gregorio and a few dozen of his cohorts appeared, attacking us with harsh and violent swear words. They were accompanied by a large group of monstrous animals. Under any other circumstances, we probably would have fled had it not been for our guide's wholesome warning. Gregorio held his ground, resolute and imperturbable, sending out waves of intense light, carrying imponderable magnetic energies, which came over us to strengthen us with the resources we would need for that irreprehensible procedure. As I looked at the sinister faces approaching us, I must confess that I had never felt such fear, yet such a contagion of confidence. The priests of the darkness advanced toward Gregorio like a general parleying with the enemy before beginning the battle. You miserable hypnotizer of naive servants, where are your weapons for our duel? You weren't satisfied with just reckoning my personal plans. You had to entice a number of my collaborators in the name of a master who offered those who followed him nothing but sarcasm, suffering, and crucifixion. Did you really think I would be willing to accept principles that undermine human dignity? Did you really think that I could be jinxed by sorcerers of your lineage? You traitor of the given word, I shall destroy your bewitched powers. I do not believe in the sugar-coated love that you have chosen as your battle cry. I believe in the power that governs life and by which you shall kneel before me. Seeing that Gregorio did not move, as if he were glued to the ground due to the indefinable prostration, despite being surrounded by intense light, the priest of the black mysteries, stroking the handle of his gleaming sword, shouted angrily, "Coward, can't you stand up and hear my accusations? Have you lost your self-respect, just like all those that have taken part in the movement of humiliation that has plagued the world for nearly 2,000 years? Long ago, I too believed in heavenly protection through religious activity concerning the ideals you yourself now believe in, but I soon realized that the divine throne is too far away from us to concern ourselves with reaching it. There is no merciful God, only a directing cause. That cause is intelligence, not sentiment. So I have shut myself off in that determinative power so as not to founder. The will, the command, and the power are in my hands. If your magic can prevail over such principles, then accept the glove with which I slap your face. Let us duel. Gregorio cast a glim eye at Gregorio's silent assistants and exclaimed, "Here at your side lie helpless all my collaborators who have shamefully gone to sleep because of your alluring spell. However, every one of them shall pay dearly for their defection and treason." His cat-like eyes glared at us, but except for me, who had to remain attentive to my duty, no one dared change the attitude of deep concentration on the purposes of humility and love to which we had been urged.
Thanks, Soraya. So Gregorio arrives with a few dozen of his assistants or spirits that were still under his command and protection. One thing interesting here, they were accompanied by a large group of monstrous animals. How can we interpret that? We discussed animals in the Q&A last week. My understanding here, this is the phenomenon of lycanthropy. These are spirits that make themselves look like monstrous animals because of their own internal mental process, like we see in books, in studying the book, in some of Andre Luiz books. The spirits can transform themselves through their own inferior thoughts to gain animal-like appearances. That can be done either because they want to present themselves as scary animals, or because they see themselves as animals. They become reduced to look like animals because of their inferior vibrations. So these are, in my understanding here, not animals in the spiritual world, but spirits that look like, transform them in animal. Okay. Of course, Andre Luiz says that looking at this army coming towards them, under any other circumstances, like Elmo was saying, most of them will have run away, including Andre Luiz. Andre Luiz said that he never had felt such fear, but because he had such trust and confidence in seeing Gubbio and Matilda, he knew that he had to stand his ground. He was the one responsible for leading the group, because Gubbio was in a mediumistic trance. So Gregorio arrives and starts, of course, shouting, asking for a battle. He wants to fight. That's the only way that the spirits, the lower zone spirits, understand the process of influencing others, by fighting, by wars, by dominating, by imposing their will. And weak-minded spirits will fall under their spell. Okay? We have to remember that what happens here on Earth is a copy of it's a bad copy of what we have in the spiritual world. So of course, if we have wars here on Earth, where the idea comes from battles that we all have been involved throughout the millennia in the spiritual world, this type of battle. So they don't know, Gregorio and these spirits that work with him, they don't know any other way. They know the way of a battle, of fighting, of imposing their will and dominating the weaker minds through their will. And of course, Gubbio is not impressed, doesn't move. He's there, glued to the ground, as Andre Luiz describes here, surrounded by intense light. That's very important. Surrounded by intense light. Gregorio continues to shout, but then he comes with some interesting concepts here. That concept that there is no merciful God is a very common concept on the lower zones. Gregorio, former pope, right? So a very religious person when he was incarnated. And through the political power and the deviations from the church, he got lost in his way. But what does he believe? He knows that there is a spiritual life, right? Because he's there. He knows he's not incarnated. He understands that there is a spiritual world. So who is in charge of the spiritual world? Of course, he cannot accept that there is a God, but there is something else. So he says, there is no merciful God, there is a cause. And of course, he buried his sentiments, and he uses only his intelligence, right, the intellectual advancement and not the moral one. So there is only intelligence, not sentiment, and that cause, that superior cause, that God, that is, he doesn't call God, he calls cause. It's a punishing cause, that he is in charge of punishing those that deviate from the right path, as he said before in this book, when they are first introduced to him. He's the leader of that place in the lower zones, and he imposes his own justice according to what he believes is the cause responsible for that. So he believes in the will, in the command, and the power, that they are all in his hands. He doesn't believe in mercy, in sentiment. Okay, this is important to understand here. He's not evil because he wants to be evil. He's following his inferior tendencies based on true beliefs that he has, and combined with his intelligence, the intellectual abilities, he's able to be the leader of the lower zones. And then, of course, he talks about all his former collaborators that passed to Gubbio's side, and he promises to make them pay dearly for the defection and treason. Looking at the group, he only the group wasn't looking at him, wasn't reacting to him, except Andre Luiz, who had to remain as the leader, who had to remain attentive and looking at Gregorio. Okay. Questions, comments here? Elmo, anything to add here?
Yeah, I'm not so absolutely convinced that he truly believes in what he's saying. I think the fact that he had, at the very beginning of his attack, he has this urge of justify himself. He already condemns, he already states to me his acceptance of guilty. It's almost like the little kid that spills the milk, and my mom comes and starts to cry and justify, oh, but it slipped from my hand and the floor was wet and the cat meow and I couldn't stop and it just fell, please, don't hit me. It's almost a justification in an acceptance of having done something wrong and trying to find ways to justify the wrong. That's how I read this passage here.
Yeah.
Because a true commander, a true leader, they don't need to justify themselves. They don't have to give explanation of why I do what I do.
Again, we are trying to interpret his motives and his will, right? And the fact that he's ready to be rescued means that something has changed there, right? But spending all those centuries in charge of the lower zones, I believe that now he may be questioning it, but I believe that before that he was pretty sure of what he was doing, convinced that he was right. Because when he was sure what he was doing, convinced he was right, there was no opening for rescue. So, but I agree with you partially in the sense that now something has changed, and now he finds himself in need to justify his actions because something has changed.
Yeah, no, I argue that even before and even incarnate, we need to find a justification to act on our wrongs, to act in our desire to power, the desire to be in power overpowers the idea of God or anything else. So they find justification to exercise that power, to put that power above everything else. I think the love of power is greater than the love of God. And that's why Christ says, you cannot love God and mammon. And he chose to love mammon, and they just fight somehow. Especially for a Pope who, as I said, should know better.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Okay.
Okay. Displaying true disappointment in light of his unanswered insults, the fearsome head of the legions of darkness came closer to our serene instructor and shouted, "I'll stand you on your feet myself, using the blows you deserve." But before he could strike, a delicate, luminous device in the form of a throat composed of radiant fluids appeared in the air. It resembled those that are formed during direct voice sessions involving incarnates. Matilda's crystal clear, tender voice resounded above our heads, exhorting Gregorio with loving firmness. "Gregorio, do not harden your heart as the Lord calls you in 1,000 ways to the work of redemption. The long period of hardness and barrenness is over. Do not fight against the blessed prodding of our eternal Father. The thorn wounds as long as the fire does not consume it. The rock endures as long as the stream of water does not wear it away. For your soul, my son, the night that has eclipsed your mind in evil has ended. Ignorance can do much, but it is nothing when wisdom spreads its warnings. Do not think that the monsters of black magic can feed your heart with true happiness." The fearsome persecutor was confused, half terrified, whereas those of us connected to Gregory's mission could not hide our immense surprise in the light of that power-filled, unexpected scene. I understood that Matilda was using Gregory's vital fluids to express herself on that plane, just as she had a few hours before in Margarita's home. The rebellious, bitter priest now had the look of a caged wild animal. "Did you really think that love could change over time?" continued the sweet motherly voice. "Did you really think that I could forget you? Did you forget the magnetization of our destinies? Even if my soul were to journey across 1,000 worlds, I would continue to long for our spirits to be together. Thus, sublime light of love that burns in our deepest sentiments can shine in infernal abysses, attracting to the Lord those we love. Gregorio, arise." And with an inflection of tears that would disarm the most hardened mind, she emphasized, "Remember who you are. Have you let the love we pledged to each other long ago in Tuscany and Lombardy die? Have you forgotten our vows at the feet of humble altars? Have you forgotten the crosses of stone that used to listen to our prayers? Did we not both promise to work together for the purification of the sanctuaries of God on earth? Always a fine and wonderful combatant in venal human politics, you let your mind become hardened by the madness of pride and vanity from contact with a perishable crown. You drowned precious ideas in the river of worldly wealth, and you lost sight of the divine horizons by the immersing yourself in darkness in order to extend the rim of your caprice. You flattered the grandeur of the powerful to detriment of the humble. You encouraged spiritual tyranny, believing you possessed infallible authority, and you believed that after death, heaven was nothing more than a mere copy of the tribunals and courts of earth. But overwhelming disappointment surprised you upon awakening in the spirit world. And although humiliated and suffering, you coagulated your thoughts in the poisonous acid of rebellion, and you chose the enslavement of inferior intelligence as the only position worthy of winning. For centuries now, you have been only a harsh discipliner of criminal and perturbed souls that the grave caught in recklessness and vice. Has the sad condition of being a despicable spirit not pained you, my son? Such a question cannot go unanswered. The immense weariness of evil and profound inner loneliness that fills your time speaks for itself. You have learned with infinite disappointment that divine treasures do not lie in cold coffers of accumulated wealth. And you now know that Jesus has little time to frequent, elaborate, yet respectable basilicas, because from the dark human pathway emerge tears of pilgrims without light or home, without strength or bread. One could see that Matilda, nearly choked with emotion, was finding it very hard to continue, but after a long pause that no one dared interrupt, she continued. How could you have thrown away for a few days of ineffable authority our redemptive visions of Christ suffering on the cross? You have followed the dragons of evil for the mere idea that a temporary diadem could never crown your head in the rims of life eternal to which death has brought us. Even so, the divine friend has never decried our promises of service, and he waits for us with the same selflessness as in the beginning. Let us press forward. I am Matilda, soul of your soul, who once adopted you as my dear son, and whom you loved as a devoted spiritual mother. The messenger's voice went silent, interrupted by a stream of tears. Doing all he could to remain standing, Gregorio cried out as if anxious to run from himself. I do not believe, I do not believe. I am alone. I have consecrated myself to the service of the darkness, and I have no other commitments. Gregorio's voice, now less haunting, overflowed with a tone of indescribable terror. He seemed ready to flee, obviously transformed, but before the ecstatic and silent gathering, he remained magnetized by the words of the benefactor, who made herself heard, austere yet tender, beautiful yet terrible, as she dissected his conscience. He had the look of a wounded lion, and finding that he was in the middle of all those who were watching the unexpected scene in astonishment, he displayed all the extreme despair he was harboring in his soul. He drew his sword and shouted in rage, I came to fight, not to argue. I do not fear spells. I am a leader and cannot waste time on useless talk. I do not believe my spiritual mother from times past is really here. I know all about the wiles of tricksters, and I have no other choice but to fight. Gazing at the delicate form of light hovering in the air, he added, whoever you are, angel or demon, show yourself and fight. Do you accept my challenge? Yes, I do, answered Matilda, with love and humility. Where's your sword? You shall see it presently.
Thanks, Soraya.
Yeah.
It's a long one.
Yes.
But I think it's important for us to go over the whole speech of Matilda, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing that we see here is a delicate, luminous device in the form of a throat composed of radiant fluids appeared in the air. That's the device that Matilda is using to communicate. In the book, In the Domain of Mediumship, Andre Luiz describes more in detail this form of a materialization of a device that is capable of transmitting the voice of a spirit. Okay, so what we are seeing here is through the mediumship of Gubbio, a device materializes in the form of a throat composed of radiant fluids, and Matilda talks through that device. Okay. Again, all the details on how this works, we can understand the surface, right? So what we understand here is that the device is a materialization. The voice is of Matilda through the mediumship of Gregorio. And then she starts talking to him that the time of his darkness and activity in darkness is over. that it's time for him to stop to fight. And then she says that ignorance cannot fight wisdom. Again, what we always say here, once you learn something, it belongs to you. You can make mistakes caused by ignorance and face little or no consequences, but you cannot make mistakes when you know, because then you create karma and responsibility. So wisdom will always prevail. Gregorio starts listening to this voice and becomes confused, half terrified, because he's hearing his mother's voice and something is coming back to him, of course, and he's realizing that something is going on, but he's trying to fight against it. Andre Luiz says that Matilda was using Gubbio's vital fluid. Again, vital fluid in the spirit. We talk about vital fluid in incarnates, but now discarnate spirits also have vital fluids. So Matilda is using Gubbio's vital fluids to express herself, like she did before in the last chapter, when she was in Margarida's home and she was talking to Margarida, and through the mediumship of Gubbio, right, trying to help and assist Margarida. But Margarida was, of course, sick. It's not, so she was much more open and receptive to Matilda's words than Gregorio, who is, of course, resistant. But now he's feeling himself in a prison. Matilda says, and here is very important, when you truly love someone in the sense of a divine love, that not the love that we know here, the agape, that is in the Greek, one of the 7 words for love in Greek, the pure love, you are connected forever. And she says here, even if my soul were to journey across 1,000 worlds, I would continue to long for our spirits to be together. You cannot leave behind the ones that you truly love. You will be trying to help and assist them, even if it takes forever, because again, we are eternal spirits. So she's been waiting for this for hundreds of years, maybe 500-600 years, to rescue her loving son, but she will not leave him behind, because we cannot move forward if our loved ones are struggling behind. We will try to find a way to help and assist them any way that we can. So he's trying to use, and the sentiment of love, the true love, is the one that is going to envelop him and make him change and make him accept the need to change. Then she talks about the time they were together in Tuscany and Lombardy in Italy, right? At the time that he was the Pope, and remind him of his promises, his presence at the altars, the prayers. And then she gives a very good description of him and how he deviated. So a fine and wonderful combatant in venal human politics. He was a pope, and pope at that time was all politics. Nowadays, still there's politics going on, a lot of it. But at that time, in the end of Middle Ages or around there, when Gregorio was the Pope, it was all politics. Some of the popes didn't even have any religious vocation. It was just the families that chose them to be popes because of political reasons. So Gregorio, she says here, you let your mind become hardened by the madness of pride and vanity from contact with a perishable crown. What's the crown? The Pope's crown. you drown your precious ideas in worldly wealth and lost sight of the divine horizon. So he didn't focus on the religious aspect and focus only on the worldly needs, right? And he acted as a pope, encouraging spiritual tyranny, and believed, like many of the popes believed, that they are the representatives of God on earth, so they have infallible authority. And also, he believed that after death, there was a continuation of what he had here. Everything that he was experiencing in the physical life will happen there in the spiritual world. So when he went back to the spiritual world, and he couldn't find what he found here on the physical world, he tried to replicate. So that's the description we see of his court in the lower zones there, with the representation of the workers. Everything reminded Andre Luiz, as Andre Luiz described, of the Roman papacy at more ancient times. Still some of that still happen. They exist today, the grandeur and the pomp. So what happened to him when he found himself in the spiritual world? She's describing to us. He coagulated the thoughts in an acid of rebellion and chose the enslavement of inferior intelligence, the ones he dominates. And for centuries, he has been only a discipliner of criminal and perturbed souls. I put a note here and she says, how has the sad condition of being a despicable spirit not pained with you? In the original in Portuguese is a despicable genius, which I think is more interesting, because he's a genius of the, to be a leader of the lower zones, you have to be, and you have to have the intellectual abilities, right? But here is where she says, what motivates this mission? The immense awareness of evil and profound inner loneliness that fills your time speaks for itself. That's what gives the opening for them to rescue Gregorio. He reaches a point when he got tired of the evil, he got bored, as we've seen in the beginning of the book. He's feeling lonely, and with all that, he's giving an opening to be rescued. Again, he's not thinking that his ways are the wrong ways. He still believes in what he's doing, but he's getting bored and tired of what he's doing and questioning. And again, what Elmo said before, right? His whole explanations is him questioning and justifying himself on what he's doing. But Matilda says to him that, you are tired. It's over. It's no longer fulfilling your heart or your mind what you are doing. And she's very emotional, of course. And he continues talking about how he deviated, chose the dragons of evil, forgetting about Jesus, the divine friend. Gregorio, and then she says, I am Matilda, your mother. And he says, I don't believe, I don't know who you are, because he's hearing only the voice, he's not seeing, right? He tries to flee because he understands that it's a battle. He starts to realize it's a battle he cannot win. So he starts to try to flee, but again, the magnetized words of Matilda, the vibrations envelops him, and he's not able to move. So Andre Luiz describes here austere yet tender, beautiful yet terrible, as she dissected his conscience. That's very interesting, right? And we see that on our Monday mediumship meetings, sometimes when you're talking to spirits and they try to flee, they try to run away, they try to escape, and they are controlled by the spiritual benefactors, by the energies of the place, right? So he's trying to escape here, but he cannot move. He's controlled by the energies. But he continues saying, I do not believe you are my spiritual mother. I know it's all trickers. I can only fight. And then he says, do you accept my challenge? And Matilda answers, yes, I accept your challenge. And he asks, where is your sword? And she answers, I'll show you my sword. Okay. Comments here? Questions? Elmo? Nothing to add here?
No, that's good. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
Okay. After a few moments of anxious expectation, the luminous throat vanished, but a light, shapeless mass appeared nearby. I understood that the glorious emissary was about to materialize herself right there by using Gregory's vital fluids. Joy and amazement dominated the gathering. In a few instants, Matilda appeared with her face veiled with highly tenuous gauze. Her shining white robe on her slender, noble frame under a sapphire blue halo reminded me of some enchanting Madonna from the Middle Ages that had suddenly come to life. Stately and calm, Matilda strode toward the somber persecutor. However, the perturbed and impatient Gregorio attacked her sword in hand, exclaiming resolutely, to arms, to arms. Matilda stood still, serene and humble, though powerful and beautiful, with the majesty of a queen crowned by the sun. A few moments later, she advanced, and holding her right hand to her heart, she stated in a gentle, loving voice, I have no other sword than the love with which I have always loved you. She suddenly unveiled her face to reveal herself in a flood of intense light. Contemplating her soft and sublime beauty bathed in tears and feeling the loving radiations from her welcoming arms, Gregorio dropped his sword and went to his knees, crying out, Mother, my dear mother, my dear mother. Matilda embraced him and exclaimed, my son, my dear son, may God bless you. I want you now more than ever. That embrace entailed a frightful clash between the light and the darkness. The darkness could not endure. As if smitten in the corners of his soul, Gregorio had regressed to a childlike fragility in a full swoon from the power that upheld him. At last, his liberation had begun. The benefactor held him in her arms as several members of the dark phalanx fled in terror. Victorious, Matilda thanked us with words that moved the most recondite fibers of our being. Then she entrusted her defeated son into our care, assuring us that the selfless Gregorio would be in charge of her divine treasure for some time to come. After embracing us affectionately, she dematerialized to our chorus of hosannas to prepare the glorious future. When Gregorio had recovered, he rejoined us. Edified and happy, Gregorio supported the immobile Gregorio with his arms like the faithful Christian who is proud to support his unfortunate friend. He prayed surrounded by sanctifying light, causing us irrepressible tears of joy and recognition. Then amid triumphant and blissful peace, Gregorio said our task had ended and that he was ready to lead the heterogeneous but expressive group of new learners of the good who had been gathered during the endeavor of saving Margarita to an important and blessed colony of regenerative service.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So the throat disappears and a light, shapeless mass appeared nearby. Andre Luiz talks about her was about to materialize again using Gubbio's vital fluid. So before we had her speaking through that device that Andre Luiz described, now she's going to materialize herself, make herself visible. Again, materialization, she becomes visible to everyone there, right? The only one that may have been seeing her was Gubbio in the trance. All the other spirits that were there were not seeing Matilda. They were hearing her voice, but not seeing her. Once she materializes, she makes herself visible to all spirits, both Gregorio's team and, of course, all of Gubbio's team that were there. So she appears, but with her face veiled with a gauze, right? Andre Luiz describes her as a beautiful Madonna from the Middle Ages, like we see in the paintings from that time, right? She walks towards Gregorio. Gregorio trying to fight. He hasn't seen her yet. He's seen the figure, the light, but he hasn't seen her completely because her face is covered. Matilda walks towards him and then says that what's her sword? And she says, I have no other sword than the love with which I have always loved you. Meaning the love, the eternal love she has for him is the sword that she uses to fight him, or really to embrace him. And then she reveals her face to him, and that's, together with the energy, the light, and finally him being able to see her, that's what he finally wins over him, right? And when he sees her, he starts screaming, "Mother, my dear mother, my mother." And she embraces him again. Even the most hardened criminals have someone that loves them and will take care of them when they are ready. So she talks about him, my son, my dear son, may God bless you. There is no darkness where light becomes present. The complete darkness can be broken by a small flicker of a candle, right? So darkness does not exist. What exists is the absence of light. Once light comes, darkness disappears. So there is no clash between the light and the darkness, because darkness cannot resist light. Now, what happens to Gregorio? Once he becomes, he surrenders, very likely he loses the conscience. He enters into a sleep state, like many of the spirits we talk on Monday, and we put them into a sleep state because that's the only way that they are going to be able to receive the treatment. They have to go through this transition of a sleep state phase. So Andre Luiz describes that he regressed to a childlike fragility. Again, not a childlike appearance, a childlike fragility. And he enters into semi-unconscious state, allow himself to be held and carried by Gubbio. She held him in her arms, and interesting, right? Several members of the Dark Phalanx fled in terror. So here we see that not all of them that came with him are ready yet to change. So they see everything, but they sometimes don't realize what's going on. They only see Gregorio changing, and they only see Gregorio losing his battle, and they flee like soldiers that flee from a lost battle in a war. That when they see that they have lost the battle, they run away. And these spirits that are not yet ready to be rescued, they fly in terror. There is no guarantee that they have seen Matilda here, okay? They may seen something, a light. If you remember, for those that have read Paul and Stephen, when Paul, at that time Saul, meets Jesus in the desert in Damascus, Jesus appears in front of him with a light that very bright light. He sees Jesus. Companions see a light but do not see Jesus, and others don't see anything, just see Paul. So depending on your mental state and your readiness, you will see what your mind allows you to see. Okay, so, and when they see what's happening to Gregorio, they can see Gregorio, and you see that the leader loses the battle, then what do you have? You have nothing left, and you they run away from it. So Matilda gives her son to Gubbio's care. Very interesting here. Why doesn't Gregorio stay with her, right? Isn't she the mother? Why he stay with Gubbio? Let's go back to Andre Luiz, right? When Andre Luiz was not rescued by his mother was always there, and he, as he says, she tells him in O Solar, but he's rescued by workers that are at a closer level to him. The way it works in the spiritual world is that there are workers at every level of vibrational level, and the workers that are capable of assisting Gregorio, well, not capable, but are more useful to assist Gregorio, are at a much lower vibrational level than Matilda. Couldn't she stay there and help him? Of course she could. But we all have our roles in the spiritual world. It's a learning experience. You don't need an evolved spirit to take care of a suffering spirit in the level of Gregorio. You need spirits that are closer to him in vibrational level as an opportunity for those spirits to learn and to educate themselves also. It's very important to understand this concept, because sometimes I hear out there, oh, Jesus came and wrote, and I don't know how many books, and you find out there. No, Jesus is not going to write any books. There are spirits that are between Jesus and us that can write these books, can receive and disseminate his messages. We have Emmanuel writing the books. We have Andre Luiz writing the books through the mediumship of Chico Xavier. And we can ask, why not Jesus wrote directly through Chico Xavier? But why taking away the opportunity of a spirit like Andre Luiz to do all this beautiful work? We can relate to Andre Luiz with his writings. It is closer to us in our understanding and at our spiritual level than the messages from a very high elevated spirit that will come and give us messages that we are still not able to grasp, to understand. So everything has a function, and every level of evolution, you work according to your evolutionary level, always directed and supervised by more evolved spirits. But we all have to do our part. So that's why she's leaving Gregorio with Gubbio, that will be in charge of her divine treasure for some time to come. Won't Gregorio be able to see her? Yes, at a certain point, like Andre Luiz was able to meet with his mother, but his mother was not there all the time. He met with her, and then she went back to her work in a more elevated level. Andre Luiz had other mentors that worked with him, that directed him, that were much closer to his need at that time, because he probably wouldn't be able to follow the work that his mother was doing because he's not elevated enough. So that's the end of the rescue of Gregorio. It's you see how, you know, things can change in a very efficient way when the love overpowers and have the ability, the light has the ability to envelop those still in darkness. They cannot resist when they are ready to change, because again, we have others that run away. Why they weren't rescued? Also, because they are not ready. They still need to go through their experience. They need to really ready themselves to be rescued. Again, Andre Luiz spent 8 years in the lower zones. Why 8 years? Assistance was always there, but he was not ready to be helped. Sometimes you have to reach the bottom to be able to really and sincerely open yourself to be rescued and to receive the assistance that you need. You also remember Andre Luiz, there's this lady that comes to the gates of Nosso Lar asking to be rescued, asking to be allowed to enter, and Andre Luiz feels bad for her and wants to open the gate, and the mentor responsible at that time said, no, she cannot come in, she's not ready. And then when she moves away, Andre Luiz, she sees all the dark spots surrounding her, showing that she was not ready to be helped. So very beautiful rescue here, and a lot of very important lessons for us to understand how the spiritual world works and how our tests work in the spiritual world. Okay, questions, comments?
Okay.
Elmo? Okay,
Okay.
that's the end. Now it's just Andre Luiz saying his goodbyes.
Okay. It was time for me to leave. My eyes were wet with tears. The instructor embraced me and holding me close, said kindly, "May Jesus reward you, my son, for your role on this journey of liberation. May you never forget that love conquers all hatred and that good vanishes all evil." I wanted to tell Gregorio that it was I, an incapable disciple, who should be thankful. However, my voice was choked with emotion. Gregorio read the deepest sentiments in my eyes, smiled, and left. Elio also left in search of other arenas of endeavor. Returning alone to my spirit home, I prayed in tears. Master of infinite goodness, do not forsake me. Sustain me in my insufficiency as an imperfect and unfaithful servant. Unfathomable, sublime silence reigned all around me. But while the horizon was tainted with red, announcing the festival of the dawn, the morning stars shone, twinkling before my eyes like heaven's answer of light.
Okay. So that's the end of their journey, the end of the work. Gubbio thanks Andre for his role in this journey of liberation, which is the title of the book, of course. And he says, may you never forget that love conquers all hatred and good vanquishes all evil. Again, evil cannot resist goodness. Evil is the absence of goodness. doesn't exist in itself. And love will conquer all and will rescue all. Andre Luiz, of course, talking about his still sentiments of inability and incapability of working. You know, you work in the presence of these benefactors and you see their ability to do this type of work, and you look at yourself and you see the long journey that you have ahead to get to a place that you can do the work that they do. But we are all on our journey, evolutionary journey, and the more we learn intellectually, the more we are able to apply that. When you bring our morality together and evolve morally, we combine both to be able to work for goodness, to work to bring light to those still in darkness. So that's the end of the book. I thank you all for participating in this long journey. And next month, we start a new one. Okay? Comments, questions here?
Yeah. When you think of the commercial mind of Hollywood, and they produce the movies, and at the end, they always leave an opening for a second part, for the sort they can milk as much as possible as an industry should do. This book gives you the same feeling over here. It's almost like there is an opening for a second part and a third part. What's happening now? What's going to happen to the lower zone, where this guy was the emperor, and now that empire no longer has an emperor? What's going to happen to it? Who's going to take over? He's going to be broke down into pieces. All those things comes to my mind. For the disbelievers, they will question, just like that. The guy is the emperor of a huge empire, and in a matter of a few minutes and with apparition of a light, this guy is just broken down into pieces like this. Is it actually possible? It is. And it did not happen in a matter of a few seconds, because that would not be possible. It's a process that only happened when that woman judged that the time was right to initiate that process. As you said so well, I mean, he was start to get bored. He started to get to the realization that all that power that he worked for and lose the most precious things in his life, he start to take a weight on his heart, and he start to realize that that's not perhaps the best thing. That should be something that brought him some more happiness. And that's the window of opportunity that the higher spirits will use. So it didn't happen in 3 minutes. It was a process that was completed in that 3 minutes.
Yeah, very good point, Elmo. It's a process that has been in the works for centuries, probably, right?
And that the spirit himself have to mature to deserve that opportunity. As we always say in the center, if you are here now, it's because you are ready to make changes.
Yeah.
And that same process works with small endeavors and large endeavors. It's the same thing. It just takes time. Wait for an opening for change. Wait for the pain to be overwhelming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We see here amongst the incarnates, right? It's the same thing. Sometimes people don't want to change, or are too lazy to change, or not bothered enough with the what's happening to them. It's like the dog in the that it's laying on the nail, right? And complaining, and he's not suffering enough to move. And sometimes we need this push for us, to We need to get to the bottom of the pit for us to be open to change. But it's a beautiful work, and it's really worth rereading, rewatching the classes, because there's a lot to learn on this that we have learned throughout this couple of years that we have been studying this book. Okay, and next month we start the next book on the collection, which is Between Heaven and Earth, that you can see here, the cover. This book starts with an intercessory prayer by a young girl, a 14-year-old girl, that sends a prayer to her mother for her mother to help her because she's struggling. And the mother is in the process of obsessing the stepmother and is in no condition to hear the prayer. But because she is a spirit that deserves to be helped and assisted, her prayer is received by a mentor who then goes and forms a team to help the girl. And that's the story of the book. We are going to see the whole drama of a family through reincarnations and the loss of young children, and children being reincarnated, the same spirit reincarnating in the same family. It's a beautiful story, a lot for us to study, to learn. Talks about the spiritual colony for children in the spiritual world. So there's so much for us to learn from this book. We start next month. Okay. What else we have? The Valdo is sold out. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get the United Nations to agree to increase the capacity. We're still trying, but fortunately, it's not looking good. Unfortunately, we were hopeful, but the UN is not being very flexible. We're still trying. We're trying different avenues to see if we can increase capacity and have more people being able to go there. But so far, it's not working. Okay. I think that's it. Carol, can you do our final prayer? Yes, Wayne.
Thank you, Sarita. Sure. Thank you, Sarita, for your readings for the book, and Joel and Elmo, thank you for leading us through this.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Wayne. So nice of you. Thank you.
Thank you for participating. Without participation, we would have nothing here. So it's important everyone be here.
John,
yeah.
May I ask one quick question regarding the book Between Heaven and Earth? Is that book available for purchase at the center, or should we order it on? Oh, it is. Okay.
Yes, we have it at the center for those that want the physical copy. You can also buy it through Kindle or online if you want.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, John. Thank you, Elmo. Thank you, Sarita, for reading today. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks for being together today as brothers and sisters for our study of the book Liberation. Love and light will prevail over darkness in the journey of liberation. We give thanks for a better understanding and overview of the compassionate work of high order spirits and their interaction, guidance, and prayers for difficult discarnate spirits. We know that the rescued spirits do need work. They need working toward their next reincarnation process through preparation, through honesty that their issue is truly there, through recapitulation and the actions that merit the best possible use of a future physical body and opportunity. We give thanks to our spiritual benefactors, the good spirits, our protector spirits, our guardian angels, for guiding and inspiring us today and throughout the week. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within our hearts and within our minds. going forward each day, endeavoring and acting in forward action, good endeavoring. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within our hearts, minds, and may we pray for SGNY, the teachers, our directors, our mediums, our workers, and all family members and affiliated loved ones. We pray for world peace, inner peace, and we pray for all suffering spirits, no matter what world they are in. As we close our studies and complete our study of the book Liberation, we ask for safety and protection as we return to family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. We remind ourselves to go forward now as beacons of love, light, peace, service, and charity. So be it.